Welcome back, everybody. What a way to kick off 2022. My first interview of the year is a actor and a wonderful person I've been trying to, well, not trying because I haven't reached out to you more than a few times, but wanting to speak to ever since I fell in love with Suits many, many years ago. Welcome,
thank
welcome,
you.
welcome, Ray Proscia.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. This is your first interview of 2022.
It is. You were the inaugural event.
Well, great. What a great way to kick off the year.
I think so too. I think it's a perfect way to do it because it brings me, kind of back to the roots of the reasons why I wanted to have a show is to talk to the actors who I admire and ask them questions and see how things are on the other end of that lens, if you will. So very, very exciting.
And how long have you been doing this show?
Since May of 2020,
right as the world came to a halt.
Pretty much. I was sitting at home and I was just taking workshops, online workshops with casting directors and taking acting workshops. Mm-hmm. And then, usually in these workshops, they're, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours long. And, they see you and you get a chance to ask one question and that's it. I'm like, well, I have more questions. And I'm speaking to casting directors and it's fascinating stuff. I want to ask them more questions. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to try to talk to people and start my own show, just really for me, and then to share this information with other people who are interested. So
I think that's great because one of the things I find interesting in my business is that a lot of people will tell you how they would behave in the business, what they think about the business, what a set is like. And often it comes from people who have never been on a set, who have never really experienced the entire world of being on a set. So I think it's smart of you to go to the source.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I agree with you completely because a lot of people like to give advices and they get wonderful views. Well, this is not one of those shows. I think the highest number of views I've ever gotten on one of these episodes was, I think, 10,000 views or something to that effect, which is very respectable. I'm good with that.
Yes, not too shabby.
It's not something that's going to get millions of views because it has a very limited audience of people who actually really care about acting and want to listen to it. So, but a sign of a great actor and somebody that I actually, I learned to appreciate you as an artist after having watched you in Imposters, because I loved Dr. Lipschitz, and we're going to come back to Suits and spend some time on that, of course. But I absolutely loved you as Dr. Lipschitz, and I absolutely hated you as the doctor in Imposters. And that's the sign of a great actor, somebody who can embody the character so much that you really believe them to be that person and have such strong emotion towards them. So kudos to you. I really, really, really appreciated that.
I often joke that this is the one profession where when someone says, "Wow, I really hate you," the response is, "Thank you so much." Yeah, thank you. Imposters the doctor was such a fun role because, like with Suits, when I booked Imposters, I spent a lot of time with the creator and the writers about developing the character and how I saw the character, how they saw the character. And they really handed me the ball and said, "Here, run with this. So we like what we've discussed, just run with it." So there was a lot of freedom for me in finding his foibles, his tics, what made him what he was, or who he was. And I loved playing that role.
It's interesting because, again, and I know you're a serious person, which we'll talk about later, but which of these roles did you enjoy more? Because what I find, and what I love about hosts, when a host is asking the question and answering it themselves. I always appreciated it. But what I was going to say is that, me being the goofy kind of funny guy that I am, anytime I get a chance to be completely different than that on screen is the most fun, because then I can just let go and I can enjoy. So for you, I know that there's an element of the doctor because he's very serious and you're very serious, but it's obviously a very different type of a person from you. did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy Dr. Lipschitz? Did you enjoy The Man in the High Castle? What was it for you?
Well, as far as the entire experience went, I say to actors all the time, every actor should have an experience in their career like Suits. Suits was the superlative. That Suits was the kind of thing that you strive for as an actor, and I hope will happen again. It was like lightning in a bottle. You know, when you work the way I do with my career, it's a little bit like, I assume, being a foster child. You show up on a set, it's already, you know, with Suits, it was season 7. So you're walking in, you've got to figure out the power structure that's at play. You've got to figure out who's who you need to be closer to and further from. And that applies to not just the actor doing that, but for the character. And when I arrived on the set of Suits, all I knew of Rick Hoffman was Louis Litt. And sometimes actors are very much like their characters, sometimes they're not. And so I was a little bit on guard. I thought, okay, if Louis Litt walks in, I don't know what to do. And I'll never forget, I was standing in a far corner of the stage just running lines, and he walked in and he was being mic'd. He was about 20 feet away from me. And I remember him like sort of looking across the crowd of people who were setting up the scene. And he got this big smile on his face. He crossed the stage, he hugged me, and he said, "Welcome, I'm so excited." The entire experience was like that. Everybody, and I mean everybody, was so lovely, so talented. Every time I worked, I felt like I was visiting family. And I love Toronto. I was very lucky. I did 2 shows in Toronto. The entire experience of Suits was great. And as far as my input as an actor, they actually let me have input. I was able to say, hey, what about this storyline? What do you think about this? And again, like Imposters, they gave me the role and said, run with it. And it was lovely. So that's hands down my favorite experience. As far as The Doctor goes, it was a great experience also. But the thing about playing a role, I have a long line of pretty horrible roles I've played. And I've come to learn that I'm guilty of this as well. Guilty is the wrong word. I do this as well. Whether you like it or not, when you're an actor and you're working, you start assuming the relationship off screen that exists on screen. So off screen, Rick Hoffman and I adore each other. I just was in touch with him last week still. Love Rick. We're friends. I don't know that would have happened if I had been his enemy in the show. In Imposters, because I was playing the role I played, whether actors know it or not, they all sort of just pushed away. So I didn't get to really know the other actors I was working with. And The Doctor was very, very solitary. In the first season, in the 4 episodes I did, I was alone on the phone. Yep. And there was quite a bit of season 2 where I was alone on the phone. So I didn't get the same kind of familial relationship with the rest of the cast, but that makes sense to me because of the role I was playing. But it was a great experience.
Yeah. It's a really, really interesting show. I enjoyed it tremendously.
Yeah.
I certainly wish for season 3. So if anybody is watching or listening, please make that happen. It'll be without the Doctor, but there's somebody growing into that role. So that's how they left it there. But if you were to ask me, how do you think Rick greeted me? I immediately, whether it's intuition that we were talking about or something else, just knowing more about the man, I immediately would have said he hugged me. That was the first thing that came to mind. So I'm very happy to hear that.
Rick is, don't get me wrong, Rick is a lot like Louis Litt, but in all the best ways as well. Some of the crazy, weird ways, but he is so warm, so loving, so sensitive, so present. He's a lovely guy.
Yeah, Rick, if you're watching, the invitation is still out for you. Please jump on anytime. I actually wanted to, going back to Suits for a bit. I wanted to ask you because Louis had to be emotional. So there's so much happening in that scene, or in the scenes between him and Dr. Lipschitz, where you can see, and this is what I appreciate as an actor and then as a person observing this, you can see him taking everything fully in.
Mhm.
You can see it in his eyes. You can see it on his face. What was it like being in a scene with somebody who's that accessible, who whatever you're doing, it just lands and you see it?
It is incredibly fulfilling. The interesting thing about Rick was we did our first episode together, and it could take 6 hours, 5, 6 hours to film a 5-page scene. So there's a lot of downtime where you're chatting as yourselves. And we discovered we came from similar backgrounds. We had very similar training as actors.
Mhm.
So immediately we knew how to support the other person. I'm so grateful when that comes from an actor. And Rick was so present and so vulnerable that it was, and I remember saying this to him, it was like having the most amazing game of tennis with somebody who played as well as I did. And it just was wonderful. And you know what, to be honest with you, I mean, really, I had scenes with him. 90% of my scenes were with him. I had a couple of scenes with Gabriel, and Gabriel was just as amazing as an actor. And I was floored. I had the one big emotional therapy session with Gabriel as Harvey, and I was floored at how good he was and how present he was. Not that I didn't expect it. When that happens, it's just magic.
Yeah, because again, I haven't had much experience in this, but when it happens, when you're in a scene with a person who is that good, you don't have to do much. You can, the whole idea of acting just being present. That's the way for you to be present, because all you have to do is just be there, and then everything goes off of it. It was magic.
It's true. But, I've had the experience, for example, when I worked with Rick,
Yeah.
You start by doing the master shot. So it's the two of us sitting in our chairs talking, and then there's a closer master, so it's tighter. But then we do coverage. And depending on the director and the day, they might do my close-up first. They might do his first. And this isn't always the case, but when the camera was on me and I was working, Rick was 100% there. It didn't matter if the camera was on him. It didn't matter if he was in the shot. He was 100% there, making sure. And here's an interesting thing, because a lot of people, particularly stars of shows, may not do this. He made sure I felt safe. He made sure I felt supported. There was one episode, I don't remember what it was, but he stopped something. He said, "Are you okay? I want to make sure you're okay." And I said, yeah, I'm fine. He was incredibly supportive, loving, a great actor to work with.
That's very, very cool.
And that's not always the way. Trust me, that is not always the way. I've had my fair share of doing the other person's coverage, and they turn the camera on me, and he decides he's busy, and they put a piece of blue tape on a pole with a stage manager reading with me. I've had my fair share of that.
Yeah, that's just not cool.
No.
Not cool at all. The accent, obviously that's the first time I saw you on screen. I saw you as Dr. Lipschitz. Even though that's actually not true, because I saw Seinfeld before that. I didn't remember. Which happens all the time. It's like, oh yeah, yeah. But the accents. I know you have 14 accents that you have been trained in, that you do. When you were meeting with the suits powers that be, was it a particular accent that they were already looking for that was a part of it, or did you have input into it?
By the time they were searching for the role, I believe for about a month, and they were bringing in people from all over. And by the time the audition got to me, they did ask for German.
Okay.
But I will tell you that the day that I went in to meet with them, there were 3 other actors going in. I knew 2 of them. They did not do accents in their auditions. They just did their plain American. Okay. The gentleman who went in before me, I know, and he is from the Scandinavian countries. And then I went in as German.
Okay, interesting. It's again, from the acting perspective, right? If they ask for a specific accent, then you try to deliver it. With me, anytime I read something on a page, to me, it comes across with some sort of an intonation, the way that the person kind of feels. I'm very feely. So an accent and the way that they speak is a part of that. So most of the time, I have to stop myself from actually doing an audition with an accent. Thankfully, because of this, right? When we get the chance to do all of our work on self-tape, I started sending them 2 takes. One, the way that they ask, and one with an accent, just because that's what feels good and right to me. Whether they like it or not, I don't know. But I started doing it.
And your native accent is Ukraine.
Well, Russian technically, right? I'm
Russian.
eastern part of Ukraine, so the first language was Russian, and then we learned Ukrainian. But it was, for me at the time when I was there, Ukrainian was like Spanish here. You learn it, you speak it. I was fluent in Ukrainian, but it was not a primary language. And then I left when I was 14. So after that, the border, kind of closed. Ukraine said, we're Ukraine, everything is in Ukrainian. And then other people switched over to primarily Ukrainian. For me, it was Russian.
Yeah, because I was watching your videos and I immediately picked up the accent and thought, at first I thought Polish. No, not Polish. And I knew it was somewhere Ukraine, Poland, Russia. I knew it was right there.
Well, because you were trained in accents.
Yes.
For me, a lot of the times when I talk to people, they're like, are you Canadian? I said, I wish I was.
Really?
But I am not. I have the same fondness for Canada as you do. If I were moving, it would be Vancouver or Toronto. I love Canada, and if my wife was up for it, we would have moved.
Yeah, see, the thing with me with Canada, and I mean this sincerely. Occasionally when I miss Canada, I will put on a Hallmark movie, because I spent 3-4 years working there. I worked 2 years in Vancouver and then 3 years in Toronto. And it's not just Canada. I don't know that if I had moved there and wasn't working, or if I was there for another reason, I would be so in love with it. But it really represents this golden time for me when I was doing this work I loved with people I loved. And so, and at one point that I was staying in a hotel that had about a dozen TV stations only, and 3 of them were Hallmark. So I spent a lot of time just watching Hallmark movies. So now when I'm homesick for Canada, I put one on, and it doesn't matter what it is. I just enjoy watching the scenery from Toronto or Vancouver.
You saw my videos, so you know that I went on a whole Hallmark binge, and I was extremely fortunate to have spoken with all of the people from Signed, Sealed, Delivered. I love that community.
Yeah.
And, now I'm going through other shows and doing the same. But absolutely, to me, it's like the whole idea of Vancouver specifically. You have CW, you have Hallmark, you have Lifetime, you have so many things that I already love and associate with. I think for me, artistically, it would be, it would be playgrounds like Disney World to be there as an actor.
There was a 5-year span when I actually, I have not, other than doing Call of Duty, the video game, I have not worked in LA since September of 2015.
Wow.
Everything I did, all the shows were outside of LA. Vancouver, Toronto, New York, New Orleans, Atlanta. And when you're working on location, for me, when I'm working on location, it takes the feeling of work away. So my memories of Toronto were, I was working and I worked hard, but it just doesn't, I don't remember it that way. Unlike a lot of jobs I do in LA that I remember as work. Yeah. So I romanticize it a bit, I guess is what I'm saying. But I love it there. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's that memory, right? It's the original association, and what do you take back with you? Yeah. And I know with you, it's it's all, what do I remember here as opposed to the photo that I'm taking. So
right. You have been keeping up with my interviews. That is correct. Yeah. I know. I say that to people still, and they think I'm out of my mind about photos.
It's just your way. So there's nothing.
Correct.
I know for me, again, being a kid and now having my kids, I have a 17 and a 12-year-old. So having all the video and photographs that we took of them, I love looking at it because it reminds me of the different parts in their lives. And I don't have that for me. I have some photos of myself.
Of course.
Certainly, I have no videos. I would have loved to see that because it's the image that I have in my head and certain things that I remember. So I'm a fan of photo and video, but I can understand where you're coming from because it's here. It's what I
Yes.
remember, and I would put it. It's here. It's what is the association? What is the feeling that I have of the place? Because that's the first thing that I feel when I walk in somewhere. Like Switzerland for me. You ask me where do you want to go? Pack a bag. We're going Switzerland.
Really?
When I was in Switzerland, and have you had a chance to?
Yes. Yeah.
So we go, and I think it was Zurich or Geneva, and I look at in front, and there's this incredibly beautiful lake, and then I look to my left, and then there are these picturesque mountains. I look to my right, and then there are these idyllic, from a storybook type houses. And my brain just went on fire because everywhere you look, it's just gorgeous. It's magic. So my association didn't take any photos. This is right here and right here. I want to go back to Switzerland because that's what I want to re-experience.
It's interesting because you keep going. You said this about your acting before, your experience, and for me, it's here. Even when my work as an actor, I don't think about from here down. It's all mental. It's the technique I've developed, and it frees this up for me. But I never think about it. If I'm doing a scene and it's happened where I will just start crying, even though the script doesn't call for it, because mentally that's where I go, and vice versa. So I'm a very cerebral actor, and I'm a very cerebral person versus emotional.
I had to disconnect the brain in a way from the acting because I am very, very analytical. I didn't start out probably being that way, but I spent 20 plus years working in IT. And I spent it in business intelligence, which is all about analytics and reporting.
Right.
So the analytical part of my brain developed so much that when I went and I started doing improv, me being a writer and me being analytical, it was hard for me to disconnect and just be present because I was writing and I was going and I was leading and I was anticipating. So it took me a while to get out of that. And when I'm acting, I noticed that if I'm in my head, I'm not present. So I try to kind of disconnect that part and just be as fully grounded and as connected, eye to eye with the person that I'm working with and to the environment, because that allows me to be, and then things just come and I feel more engaged and I feel more natural in what happens next. I don't pre-plan anything. So for me, I think because that's the way I'm wired, I kind of went into the other way, and it's all here, and it's I'm empathic, so it all kind of became more on that side.
I would challenge what you just said to me.
Okay.
I would challenge it because you may be empathic and you may think you're here, but everything you just said to me is a mental process. You can't connect with your surroundings here. You have to connect here. You have to see where you are. So everything we've said so far about acting is very analytical. I learned a really important lesson from my mentor, Alice Spivak. I studied because of where I was born and when I was born. I studied with the greatest teachers of American theater, and Stella Adler, Lee Strasberg, Uta Hagen. And I met Alice Spivak when I was, I believe, 22. I had already studied with those teachers when I was younger. And Alice said to me, listen, you picked up some great lessons, but now you have to see how they apply to you, because Stella or Uta or Lee were right about these particular things, but maybe they don't work for you. So let's find out what does work for you. And that's when I realized with her that I was a very cerebral actor. If it made sense up here, it made sense for the rest of me. But by making sense up here, I had to be able to connect with my environment. I had to, the person I was working with, and nothing's pre-planned. You're right. I would come in and be raw, but I think you're much more analytical than you give yourself credit for.
That resonates, and I take that. and thinking about the acting approach that I kind of developed for myself, you're going to laugh because it is very analytical. My approach to acting is what I call the butterfly effect, which in essence, when I try to get into a character, I don't go outside of myself. I go in myself, and I try to find a point in my history where I can branch out of where that character would have come out. So I'm
Yeah.
still grounded in me, but now it's a different version of me in this alternate reality state based on all the experiences. And I find that works really well for me. That is very analytical.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I'll
Yeah, I think one of the I used to mentor new actors who arrived in LA, not necessarily young, but new.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found really unfortunate about a lot of the training they were getting is that they weren't being celebrated in their training. It was cookie cutter. You all have to, these are the steps to follow. And I would meet with them, and I was not coaching them necessarily as far as their acting goes. It was more about helping direct their career in a work manner, who to meet, how to meet, where to go, when to go, how to behave on the set. But I would see their acting, and they just, who they were was never celebrated. It was sort of repressed so that they could follow very strict guidelines. And I thought that was unfortunate. I was very lucky to discover Alice Spivak because she did the opposite with me. But yeah, I think that's unfortunate for new actors.
I think so too, and I went through the same thing until one of my friends. I think one of my friends who's not an actor, she was watching one of the things that I think I auditioned for, and I showed it to her because I was very proud of it. And she looked at me. She said, "Well, it's good, but you're interesting. I'm happy to watch you on the screen because you're interesting." And then I'm like, "That's correct. Why am I not being me?"
Right.
Because the whole point of acting is being you in a different circumstance. So
Yeah, I coach. The green screen, the green wall, and all that you have. I have a studio set up, and I will coach people and tape people, and it's fascinating to me because I'll say, "Oh, let's just run through this," and the camera's not on, and they are wonderful. They're just them, and then you put the camera on, and they start acting, and I will stop and say, "What happened? Where did you go?"
Yep.
Because you are interesting. This is just generic.
Yeah.
I think we all do it. I had an audition in November. I wasn't feeling particularly well, and it was a lot of dialogue. And a friend came over to film me, and she kept saying, "That was really good. What's the problem?" And I said, "I'm missing from it. It was great, but I'm missing from this audition because I wasn't feeling well." And so I sort of just went back into kind of automatic mode.
Yeah. I find that a lot of the actors that I talk to that are very successful, they all reach this point. I even made a T-shirt like that. They all reach a certain point where it's called the fuck it moment. They reach that point where they stop trying to please everybody else. They stop trying to take all the lessons that somebody says this is what you're supposed to be, and this is what the casting director is looking for. And they just did what felt right, and they were professional, they were prepared, and they brought themselves to it, and they started booking.
I tell every actor I coach, if they can just get to the fuck it place, it's exactly the language. If you can just say, "I don't give a shit, fuck it," you book the job. Always, because they get to see who you are. Not be angry about it, not resented, just be you, say the lines. And they always book those jobs.
I'm very happy that you confirmed it again. So I'll send you the T-shirt. It's a cool T-shirt. I love it. I can't go to my kids' places with it, but it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I also say to every actor, forget that this audition you're doing is going to George Lucas. Forget it's going to De Niro or Spielberg. Pretend you're auditioning for an unimportant high school play. Let it be that unimportant, because if you take the stress off of you and you just say, "Yeah, I'm going to have fun and be," those are the jobs you get. Yeah.
And that's there's the money aspect of it too, right? Because a lot of the actors that I know, it's, "Hey, if I don't land this, then I can't do that."
That's
and they
correct.
put so much on it that it's that pressure that's very, very hard to break. For me, because I'm in a secondary market, I'm older and I have a family, so I'm not going to go to New York or LA, and I'm not going to be taking these jobs. For me, I have a job. I have a job. I have something that takes the financial aspect out of it. So acting for me just allows me to be freer and allows me to do things. And if I get it, I get it. If I don't get it, I don't. I still care very much if I do get it or not, but it removes the financial aspect. So if people can kind of take all of that off, and as you said, focus on you're auditioning for the not important high school play that's not going to pay you anything, and you're said just have fun. Then
just have fun.
yeah.
Do your work and have fun with it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Michael Kostrov, who's amazing. I love Michael. He's a friend of the show. He was the first person I interviewed on the show.
I watched his interview actually.
Yeah. Which one? So the very first.
The very first one.
He was also in the 100th episode, and then I talked to him recently. I need to actually push that out. So Michael said that he used to hate auditioning and he was awful at it, until he just went and he started making changes and basically said, okay, you're going in, you're not getting the job. Stop thinking about it. You're not getting the job, just go have fun. And then he started booking the job.
I always tell the actors I mentor, listen, this career is not about acting. This career is about auditioning. Yeah. That's what we do. We audition. And if we can get a job every once in a while, isn't that heaven? That's whipped cream on it. But this is the job. So we better learn how to enjoy it.
My wife keeps asking me all the time. She's like, so you're getting this and I right now, because of COVID in Chicago, there's not as much work, and I'm getting a lot of commercial auditions, which I love because it allows me to be the goofy person that I am and being that guy. So I get these auditions and I do everything I can, and I get the wardrobe and I go out of my way just because it's fun for me. And my wife's like, you're spending so much time and money on this. It's just an audition. I said, this is my acting. Yeah. This is what I get to do. Whether I land there or not is out of my control. But this I'm enjoying.
Good. I just saw that Chicago PD shut down because of a positive COVID test or something.
It's why I'm not in any of those. My agent basically said, look, I love you, but I can't I can't rep you on that side anymore because you don't have a vaccine. And I had COVID. So I had COVID in December of last year. So when the vaccines came out, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be a jerk. Let people who need it get it. So I let the first wave go through. I let the second wave go through because then our doctors kept saying, well, you have antibodies. You don't really need it now. Then we got to a point where, I had some kidney issues. And the doctor said maybe not the best thing to do based on what we're hearing about myocarditis and some of the other potential side effects. Let's kind of hold it. And then basically you're in that boat where I have reasons why I'm not getting it, but nobody cares because in order to be on the set, you have to be fully vaccinated. So for right now, it's commercials. For right now, it's voiceover. And then
is that not the case with commercials?
A lot of the commercials are non-union, so in non-union they don't follow those rules. So, but yeah, right now, like my favorite shows, and I actually asked my wife. I said, "What is going to happen if these shows come to me and saying, hey, we have a part for you, you need to get vaccinated?" Ooh, that's a hard decision because I will absolutely want to, but then I have to think about from the health perspective and is it worth it? And that's why I think a part of me is actually okay with being extracted from that world for a little bit because I don't have to make that decision.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's commercials are fun. I didn't start out thinking that I wanted to do commercials. I just thought that they were fun, and if I do them, it's cool. Now I'm enjoying it so much.
Oh, good.
So
yeah, I don't do commercials, and if I audition for 2 a year, that's a lot. I'm not a commercial actor.
You're a dramatic actor, but you started out being a comedic actor. Well, you were in theater, and then you got into sitcoms, and you thought, like I thought that I'm a sitcom guy because I'm the goofy uncle. I'm the neighbor. I'm that's me. This is my personality. And then I get cast into dramas because they look at me and they say, you're that neighbor that's going to kill somebody at the end. Uh-huh. I'm thinking, why do people view me that way? So when I heard you talking about it, that you get cast, that you got into drama and people cast you into these evil geniuses and characters who are not so nice. What was the first thought of going from, hey, I think I'm going to be in sitcom, to I get to play all these dramas all the time and people think I'm not a great guy? Why?
I can't speak to that because I don't remember that. What I do remember is a huge transition that happened. I'm going to think about 20 years ago, when I started finding myself in dramatic series. I was playing things like the cop, the detective, more like the blue collar guy. And I had an audition for a show, and it was for the role of a cop who was investigating a murder. Some rich guy had murdered his wife, and an investigation was going on. And I remember I had to go to a wedding that evening. So I thought, I'm just going to put my suit on. So rather than wearing a blue shirt and khaki pants, I put a suit and tie on, and I showed up at this audition, and I walked into the room, and this casting director had cast me in other shows. And I sat down to start the audition, and she said, wait, what's different about you? And I said, I don't know, same hair, same face. She said, the suit. Oh my God, you're not blue collar anymore. Go outside and read for the Millionaire. And I did not get that job, but ever after, suddenly my career took this change, this change where I was suddenly was seen as rich, powerful, speaking French. I've spoken French my whole life. That helped. The accent suddenly played into that. And I never went back to blue collar after that.
That's as usual. And you talk in some of your interviews about the happy accidents, right? Getting a casting director call on you because you're a must call and she doesn't know why, or getting this, just having to wear a suit. I'm very happy that you're going with what you're feeling. You're going with what feels right, because I'm just going to wear a suit, because you never know what the universe has in store for you. You're just going with it.
Well, one of the things that really gets me crazy is when working actors will get upset that they didn't get a certain role because, well, use me for example, as if I were to say, well, I didn't get that role because I have a shaved head, and that's too bad. But the fact is, a lot of my career happened because of my look. And so there's a balancing act there that I think a lot of actors throw out the window. You can't be everything. You can't fit every category, and we need to embrace the category we're in. And I say to the young actors I mentor, it's not about you finding your niche. Let your niche, be open to your niche finding you, and it will. And it will.
Just time, patience, and continuing to be a good guy. Because again, the types of characters that you're playing, if you're not a good guy, they wouldn't want you on the set.
When I auditioned for Vanilla Sky, which was many years ago, it was a Friday afternoon. It was actually, if I remember correctly, it was like Friday, December 22nd. And the city had shut down. Everyone had left for vacation. And I was at the gym. It was about 10:30 in the morning. And my agent called and said, there's an audition for this film called Vanilla Sky over at Warner Brothers. Can you get there by 1 o'clock? And I said, it's 10:30. Yeah, you got to wear a suit. You got to wear a suit. Fine. I ran home, jumped in the shower, put the suit on, ran to Warner Brothers. But it was such a late audition that I was one of the few people who was able to get a suit on. And so I'm sitting waiting to go in the room. And I remember one guy walked in with a baby stroller with his baby and shopping bags. And he said, I was Christmas shopping. And he was wearing like a t-shirt and sweatpants. People were coming in just construction shirts, denim shirts, blue jeans, shorts, workout clothes. And I'm sitting there in a suit. And I got the job. And often when I work a job, once I get to know the creative people, I may say, so I have to ask, what was it about my audition that you hired me? And I said to these people, so what was it? And one of them said, listen, we think you're great. We love you. Don't take this the wrong way. We hired the suit. You were the only one who showed up in a suit. And now talk about a twist of fate.
Yeah.
It just, had we been given 6 hours, probably everyone would have been in a suit. I'd like to think I would have still gotten a job, but I don't know.
Yeah, and then you don't know what led to what.
That's correct. That's correct.
You don't know if they liked your suit and then they saw you in this program wearing this, and then suits came
That's
to.
correct.
Speaking of suits and the accents, or just accents in general, what accent is your favorite, and which accent you can do but you don't like doing?
My favorite accent to do is Eastern European Russian.
I was going to ask you if you wanted to.
Because and you'll appreciate this, I think. A lot of Russian people, I say this to, get offended a little bit.
I don't have an ego, I don't care.
British, French, German, Australian, they're very tight and controlled. Mm-hmm. The Russian accent for me is just so relaxed and it just comes out. And it doesn't have all those tight sounds. It has really kind of open, loose, relaxed sounds to me. So I love doing Russian. I don't know that I have a least favorite to do. Yeah, I don't particularly have a least favorite to do.
Do you tend to slide? And again, obviously you're a trained actor, but I was doing an audition. My daughter was taping me and was guiding me through it, and I was doing an audition with Russian accent because in a particular thing that I was auditioning to, which I cannot mention, I had to do the same scene in English and then with a Russian accent. Mm-hmm. And then I had to jump back and forth between them, which was fun. But she said, she all of a sudden stopped me in the Russian one. She's like, "Your Scottish is coming through."
Really?
I love Scottish. It's my favorite accent. And when I was doing Russian, when I looked at the tape, my Scottish started to come through the Russian accent. You would think that Russian for me would be the easiest because it's my native language. But it's when I do Russian accent, the Russian people who know Russian can't really hear the Russian accent. And they're like, "Well, you sound sort of Italian.
Interesting.
And you sound sort of this." I'm like, okay, I get it. But, for everybody else, I sound Russian. For me, I think my Scottish starts to weave in. So
the only two accents where that happens to me, and it makes sense because they share a border, are French and German. Right. To me, the way I approach accents are familial. So believe it or not, in my brain, Russian and Italian, if you take Russian and just change the music, you actually have an Italian accent. Germany and France are right next to each other, and there are so many sounds that are similar, more that are not. So I have to be careful. And quite often, in fact, when I did something recently, and they stopped me and they said, "Your French just came out." But Russian and Scottish, to me, that puzzles me. But you have a history with that.
Well, it's the R's. It's the R's.
The last time I did a Russian accent was on one of the NCIS shows, and a woman who was in Atmosphere Performer was Russian, and she walked over to me and started speaking Russian to me. And I said, no, I'm American. And she was like, "What? But that accent." "No, it's just an accent. I'm trained well in my accents."
Well, it means you have an ear for it as well, which is.
I have an ear for accents. I also have an ear for language. I speak French and German, and it's very easy for me to copy an accent. I used to do Scottish when I was much younger. I lost it, and I can't pick it up. If I were sitting here speaking to a Scottish person, I could mimic their accent, but when they left, I couldn't do it. So it is no longer one of my accents, but I do have a very good ear for them. And quite often I can tell when someone's speaking American English, where they're actually from. So I'll sit there and go, "Nope, Canadian, English, Australian, Eastern European." I can usually hear it.
And as a man who knows how to do accents well, does it bother you when you're watching somebody do an accent and they're just terribly?
Well, but here's the thing that it used to, but the more I work, the more I come to understand. For example, Lipschitz. Mm-hmm. Lipschitz does not have a German accent. That is not my German accent.
Okay.
There's only been one job in my entire career as I said earlier, you do the master shots first.
Right.
Then you do close masters. Every single job, except for Queen of the South, which I did a year ago, every single job where I had to do an accent, we would do 1 or 2 masters, and the director comes up to me and says, we need you to cut the accent in half. And then later on during the first day, they'll say, can you temper it a little more? Bring it down a little more. When I did JAG many years ago, I was playing a French lawyer. And on the first day, it was this big courtroom scene. I had a page-long monologue. And a woman in the courtroom, one of the atmosphere performers was from Paris, and she walked over to me and started speaking French. I speak French, so I started responding. And immediately she said, you're not French. The minute I spoke French, she knew. And I said, no, I'm American. And she said, but your French accent's beautiful. By the end of the week, she came up to me and said, you sound Canadian, Quebecois, because it's just constantly cutting it. So I now understand that anytime TV wants an accent, what they want is the root of the accent.
Yeah.
So I have to, Lipschitz, for example, my autobiography for Lipschitz was, he was born in Berlin. He went to school at Eton and Oxford. So he had this very heavy British accent influence, so that when I do Lipschitz, if you listen, you can hear a lot of British sounds. That in American TV is very acceptable. So that's what I do. Even when I do my Russian accent, I have to make believe the character went to school in England, and that is acceptable. So having said that, sometimes I'll watch a performance on TV and I'll think, wow, that accent's horrible. But I have to remember, it might not have started out that way. It might have been a really fine, there's an actor who will go nameless who did a show for a couple of seasons, and he is Canadian. And his accent the first season, I was in awe of his accent that he was doing. It was so perfect. And I said to friends, God bless this actor for not having to constantly tool with it and play with it. Season 2 came in. I don't know what accent he was doing. Clearly they had gotten to him. They said, modify it, because season 2, it was just all over the map. So I try to be more forgiving of accents that aren't correct, because I'd like people, listen, The Man in the High Castle, the comments I got about my German accent for the same reason. Every day it was cutting less. But I had to say, this is what they wanted. As someone once said to me, we need the people in Ohio to understand you. And I thought, well, that's a little bit condescending to the people in Ohio, that they can't understand a true French accent. The other thing that they do, which has happened to me in the past, is they'll come over and say, you know that line where you say, for example, I had one line in JAG. I had to hang up a phone and I had to say, with my French accent, Lieutenant Morris is out of surgery. Okay, cut. Can you say that again, but say Lieutenant Morris and surgery with no accent, and the rest with French? Happens all the time. So if you watch the show, you'll see me say, Lieutenant Morris is out of surgery. And it happens all the time. Didn't happen on Suits, but it's happened on pretty much any other show I've had to do accents on. Can you say that line again, but American, French, American, French, American? Can you do that? And I can, but the product is a little crazy.
And does it take away, because again, in Michael Caine's book, he says that accent takes whatever, 25% of your acting away. So if you can act without an accent, because you always have to have a portion of your brain that's focusing on the accent.
Not for me.
Okay.
There are a couple that I will have to focus on. The most recent one I've worked on is Australian.
Yeah.
And I still haven't gotten the O sound. I spent the other day with a friend who's from Australia, and she said to me, my God, until you hit that word no, K-N-O-W, it sounded great. And then you said no, and I went, nope, gone. So I'm still working on the O sound there. Mm-hmm. So if I were having to do an Australian accent, I probably would pull myself out for a second, but French, German, Russian, English, Italian, New York, Southern, it just comes out and I don't think about it.
Excellent. I would be a terrible host if I didn't at least ask you if you want to do a Russian accent and both of us speak with a Russian accent.
You would, well, the thing is not when I do Russian accent, I just don't do accent. What I do also is, for example, you should say to me, I would to be horrible host, if I don't ask you to do accent, not an accent, the accent, no articles. I do this when I do script with Russian accent. I drop all the articles and I transpose words. So I'm doing this for you now. What do you think?
I think it's wonderful.
You do that kind of accent.
No, it actually flows. So I have to get into the hard R's. So when I talk Russian accent, I have to go and think back to how my father and how my mother speak, and then I start getting into the appropriate thing. So it's then I switch into it. But what you were doing was perfect, because what our kids, I have one of my best friends, same age, and he has the same age kids. What the kids are talking about is they say, Dad, when you're speaking, you're dropping this,
yes,
you're dropping this. It's perfect. So you absolutely got it.
Well, it's interesting. You do an Eastern Russian accent, a Western Russian accent.
Probably.
You do because for example, when I do, which is basically generic Russian, I would say, this is my father. You say father, which is Ukrainian Polish influence. Yeah.
See, not trained at all. This is just how I do things. But yeah, very.
Well, that's where you're from, so it would make sense that is what your accent would be.
Right, because it's association of the people that we know and how they speak, and then we try to emulate them, and then you go to it. But the one thing that I got away with is I was playing a Russian deli owner in the United States, and I had my Russian accent, and some of my friends watched these like, you're sounding Italian. And I said yes, because I worked for an Italian owner, and then I picked up some Italian, and that's why it's playing.
That's why I say they're brother accents. For example, if I'm sitting here talking with this accent, for it to become Italian is just a change in the music, and it becomes an Italian accent.
It's true.
It's the same. I don't really change over my head the sounds or the emphasis. It's just the music. And it's sort of the same with German and French, definitely the same with English, Irish, and Australian. And it's just a trip over to Scandinavia. So if you take them in, and the way I learned accents was, and you know this, I grew up with a very thick New York accent. And I did not look like a New Yorker. At 20 years old, I was modeling. I had long, light brown hair, hazel eyes, model skinny back in those days. And I was auditioning and no one would hire me. I didn't know why. And one of the things I like to say about myself is I am objective enough. I'm not one of those actors who walks out of every audition and says, I was great. I can walk out of an audition and say, that sucked. But I was auditioning and doing good auditions, and I wasn't booking jobs, and I didn't know why. And I went to this theater audition on 28th Street in Manhattan for an off-Broadway play, and it went really well, and I knew it. But the reaction of the audience to the director, the writer, the producer was very strange. And I left the theater, and this casting director chased me down the block and said, you were the best we've seen all day, but we can't hire you. You don't look like Travolta, De Niro, or Pacino. You are never going to work with that accent. So I started working to get rid of my accent, and I was blessed. I found a group of teachers who used an international phonetic system that was established by Milos Radosavljevic. And it can be applied to every accent. So that's how I started learning accents, by where the placement of sounds were in those accents and then hearing the music. So it's a very technical thing for me. So for me to say, yeah, they're related in my head, and then it's a short trip to Scandinavia, is because to go from English to Scandinavian, I know which sounds have to, it's like an equalizer. I know which sounds have to move.
Yeah. It's how people who do impressions, you yes. hear how they do impressions. It's that same type of approach. It's like, from here I can go to here, and then I just take a left, and then I end up with this one. So
I had an audition recently. It was a German character, and they said to me at the callback, we're looking at your resume, can you do this character as Russian? And he was a very uptight, proper guy. And I said, when I do my Russian, he ain't going to be so uptight and proper. He's going to probably be a little bit more laid back and relaxed, because with the Russian accent with me, that happens. Now, if you want uptight, I'll do British. I can do French. But the Scandinavian happens to be happier. The Irish is more laid back. Russian's always much more laid back. And they're like, yeah, all right, change the character as you need to, just do the accent.
Very cool. Listen, I want to talk to you for the next 3 hours, but I want to be respectful of your time as well.
Thank
So,
you.
last thing I want to ask
Yes.
you is, at this point in your career, having done many, many different things and being a working actor, which is one of the best compliments you can give to an actor is being a working actor. What is it that still drives you in terms of acting?
I never wanted to be a star.
Hmm.
I don't know that I necessarily ever thought about being a working actor. I grew up on stage. I was introduced to acting when I was 17, and I fell in love with the craft. I fell in love with the process. I think of myself as an artist, and I often say to people, if I were a painter and I said to you, I'm going to paint until the day I die because I'm an artist, that would make sense. Well, I feel the same way about acting. I love creating the roles. I love doing the work. I love the process. And when I'm not working, that's the part I miss. And it's great to make a living at it and all of that, but I really think of myself as an artist.
Okay, no, that's fair. And you just came up with the name for this episode. It will be The Artist.
The artist.
Yeah.
Okay, that works for me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ray.
Oh, thank you.
Really, really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you.
And thanks to everybody for tuning in to another episode of Let's Dive In. You have Ray Proscia. I'm somewhat speechless and extremely, extremely gratified. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.